Kylie and I's journey to having a family was not an easy one. It was not ideal in any way. A few years into our marriage, we had our daughter Audrey, and there was like totally normal, no complications, nothing, no problems. And then after that, it seemed like one problem after another. We could not have more children. And that actually resulted in 5 early miscarriages and 2 little girls that were born premature and passed away. And that was over a 7-year period. And it was just like we could not catch a break. And it really felt like, you question everything. You question your belief. You question, did I do something wrong? Did we do something wrong? Like, you just question everything. But then in 2014, the Lord began to speak to me in several different ways. And during worship, he would talk to me about restitution. And that happened several times, even to the point where I was like, I don't even know what restitution is. Let's look up what restitution is. And, I was like, that's an amazing promise from the Lord. And then I was reading the story of Joseph one day, and the presence of God just began to settle on me. And it got to the part where Joseph names his second son Ephraim. And I was like, well, what does Ephraim mean? So I'm looking that up, and it says he named his second son Ephraim because he was twice blessed in the land of his suffering. And immediately when I read that, the Spirit of the Lord said, I want that for you. And I just sat there and marinated in it, tears fell down, and I was just like, wow, okay. What does that mean? Because I want to be done. I want to be done. I want to move on. And the Lord spoke through a couple of people, one of them being my doctor, to try again. And so later in the summer of 2014, we found out that we were expecting a baby. And it was a fight to believe God. And really the fight and the battle was of faith. Just stay in faith. Believe God. He said he's making restitution. He said he wants this blessing for us. And at 11 weeks pregnant, I hemorrhaged. And I was losing so much blood, I thought we had lost the baby. Kylie rushed me to the ER. And my clothes are soaked in blood. They've pushed me back into the ER, and I'm like, God, what is going on? I've got to hear you. And I immediately heard, whose report will you believe? And I went, okay, all right, everything's going to be fine. They put that little wand on my belly, and there's Jack's heartbeat just pumping away. And that was the first miracle, is that everything said if this baby's going to make it, it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks for all of that bleeding to clear up. And the next day, there was no bleeding at all. A few weeks later, we found out that we were expecting a boy. And of course, we were like, of course, we knew God had told us that we were going to have this a second blessing. And so the time came for Jack to be born. And everybody's rejoicing. Like, we're having the best time in labor and delivery. We're cracking jokes. Like, we're just rejoicing in all that God has done. And Jack is born. He's born with some special features on his hands. Some of his fingers were conjoined, and that was a surprise. We didn't know that he was gonna have that. But no big deal. Everybody's like, no big deal. This is just some plastic surgery. Everything's going to be fine. And we started to notice that Jack was having trouble. Every once in a while, he would start to turn gray. And so a nurse comes in and she checks him out, and something's not right. So they rush him back to the NICU. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, really? What is happening? And come to find out, he's not doing well. There's some complications, and he's having things that are called D-stats, and it's where his heart would go into arrhythmia, his oxygen would drop, his heart rate would drop, and he needed help. So we're in the NICU now. Okay, that was a surprise. And, you're just like, okay, God, what is going on? What is happening here? And it just kind of settled in my soul that, we're still contending for the promise of God. And the medical people are here to help save his life, make sure that we don't take a sick baby home and then something worse happen. And so we're walking through this journey, and Jack is having like D-stats, one right after the other. And we've got people praying, and Dustin reached out to me and sent me a song that he and Chris Kilala had just written. Like, it hasn't been recorded yet. They had been just plunking around on the piano, and it's this like really rough recording of he and Chris at a piano singing. And he sends it to me, and he's like, hey, I'm not really supposed to send this. It's like a work tape. But I feel like this is exactly what you guys need right now for Jack. And so in the NICU, there's a lot of things you can and can't do. One of them is have a phone near a baby, because there's so much bacteria on our phones. And so we have to put our phones in a sterile Ziploc bag. And that way you can have it in the NICU. And so I literally have my phone in this Ziploc bag, and I press play, and I hear the song God of Miracles. And I'm like, yes, that is what we need. We need a miracle. And so that day, Jack had 26 D-stats in one day. And so that night, when the nurse left the room, I stuck my phone inside his incubator, and I pushed repeat, and then we played God of Miracles all night long in Jack's incubator. And the next day, I would take it out when the nurse came in so she didn't see, but whenever she would leave, I'd put the phone back in, and we would just play God of Miracles. And it's just Dustin and Chris and this piano, probably in a living room somewhere, and singing God of Miracles. The next day, Jack goes from having 26 D-stats to having 2 in 24 hours. No other interventions were made. And it was just like we received a miracle. And instead of his NICU stay being weeks and weeks, it just ended up being like 3 or 4 days. Today, Jack is getting ready to turn 9 years old, and he's healthy. There's no issues whatsoever. We haven't had to have his heart checked anymore. And he's just a healthy boy, all boy, playing football, baseball, all the things. And in that fight of faith, God proved himself that he is a God of his word, and he is going to bring restoration even in those dark times when you cannot see one step in front of the other. You just stand on his word and see that he is the God of miracles, and he will bring restoration.